Jordan Peele may have only produced this film, but I wouldn't blame you for thinking he was in the director's chair the whole time. Welcome, everyone, to My Two Cents. And as the title suggests, this is where I give my 2 cents on all types of movies. This is my first official review on the channel, and my first review on this channel is going to be Him from 2025. Now, before we get into the review, I'm going to have a little yap sesh if that's okay. First of all, this movie was actually originally supposed to be called Goat, but Sony decided to make an animated film of the same name, Goat, so they kind of stole the title from him. So that's why in the movie you'll see him say goat a lot more than they'll say him. So basically, Sony stole the title they wanted from them. Also, I was kind of stressing over what movie I wanted for my first review, and you may be wondering what makes him so worthy to be my first review. Well, we'll talk about that in the actual review. Speaking of which, let's get right into it. First, let's talk about the characters. Our main character in this film is going to be Cameron Cade, who is played by Tariq Withers. And honestly, for someone I've never heard of, he's a pretty solid character here. His acting's a bit iffy because throughout the film you'll see him kind of go from scenes where he's actually being very emotional and being very like really showing his acting chops, but then throughout the most of the movie he's kind of playing the role as if he actually is a football player where he doesn't really emote too much, he doesn't talk that much, which fair enough, he is playing a football player, but I would expect a bit more emotion and just a bit more life to this character. In this film, Cameron is a football player who his whole life, ever since he was a kid, was always obsessed with football. He always wanted to be a football player. His dad always encouraged him to be a football player. And as the trailers and a lot of the marketing suggests, he watched a lot of my favorite character in this movie growing up. That character is Isaiah White, played by Marlon Wayans. And I don't know much about Marlon Wayans. All I know is that he was in Scary Movie. I've never seen any of those movies, but I've heard he's great in those. And from what I've heard, he's always been a comedic actor, but I want to see more serious roles from him because of this movie, because he did really good at playing a serious and evil role in this movie. And again, as you can probably tell from marketing trailers and all that, Isaiah White is the villain of this story. He is the star quarterback that every football player is trying to be, especially Cameron. He looks up to him and wants to be like him. He wants to be the next GOAT. And obviously, I don't want to get into spoilers and nothing like that, but man, Marlon Wayans, whenever he's on screen, he just steals the show from just about anybody that's on screen. Like, from the way he shows off how insane his character is, from how creepy he can actually be, from seeming so like nice and kind to Cameron to doing so many sadistic and up things throughout the film. Like, truly, kudos to Marlon Wayans for making this character so insane but also likable, funny enough. There's only really one other character I really want to touch on because obviously there are a bunch of other characters in this movie I could talk about, but like there's only really one character that I feel like is really worth mentioning besides Cameron Cade's lawyer slash manager character. His character's just annoying. Like throughout the film, you're just gonna be like, God, just shut up and let Cameron Cade do his thing. But he plays his role correctly. He's supposed to be kind of annoying, so he does great there. But the character I kind of want to mention a little bit is Julia Fox's character, Elise White. And Elise White throughout the film, you're meant to believe that she is as Isaiah White's girlfriend or wife or whatever, but I feel like she's more like a mother character in some senses. I don't know if that was just the vibe I got when I was watching the film, but the whole time I was like, are they going to secretly reveal that she's actually his mom? Because throughout the film, you don't really see them interact like a couple. Like, yeah, she calls him like babe and all that, but I swear to God, she could have been his mom. And I would talk more about the characters, but I feel like it's better to talk about the characters when I go into the story segment. So I'll just end the character segment here by saying all the actors in this film I think did great. They did their roles correctly. The only person I'd say would need a little bit of work is Tariq Withers because he did his job for sure. He definitely had great moments in this film, especially towards the final act of the film. But I just think personally he could have used a bit more emotion in his character. But for the most part, I'd say he does a really solid job with his character. That's the only complaint I really have. Other than that, I'd say all the actors did great and all the characters were done well. So, the story of this film, if you couldn't tell by the marketing, is about how Cameron Cade is a up and coming football star. He's learning to be a quarterback. He almost makes it to the league, and then he gets a brain injury, and he can't play football, or at least his doctors advise him to not play football. But to his surprise and everyone else's surprise, his idol, Isaiah White, gives him a chance to learn how to be the greatest at football because he's retiring. So Cameron Cade's manager is like, you have to take this opportunity. You have to go learn with him. You have to go train with him to learn how to be the best. So he sends him off to work with Isaiah to learn how to be the best. And it's like a little football training camp thing. And when he first gets there, he's like, oh, this is pretty awesome. I finally get to play with what I believe is one of the best players of all time. I get to learn how to be great at football again. I might actually get a chance to be in the league. But slowly over time, he starts to see how sinister and weird this place is, and how Isaiah White is not the man he thought he was. And call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time that there's been a football horror movie that is centered around the game of football. And that alone makes me actually really like the story of this because they go all in on the football thing. They never like it's not like some other random like crappy horror movie you'd see on Amazon where it's like a soccer horror movie but it's like about zombies and doesn't really have anything to do with soccer or baseball or whatever. Like I wouldn't count horror movies based around like a main character who plays a sport because the movie's not about that. This movie is entirely about football, and I love that about it. And the movie's whole message is how predatory the sports industry has become and how easily people can be groomed into doing something awful that they don't want to do, but done in a pretty creative but also wacky way, which is a good way to keep the audience entertained and focused on the story at hand. And to kind of talk a little bit more about uh, Isaiah White's whole role in this story, Isaiah White misses when he was the best. He misses the glory, he misses the fans, he misses being the best quarterback. And after this year, he's not going to be able to be that anymore. He's going to be retired. He's not going to be able to play football much anymore. And he's trying to groom Cameron into being the next him. And I personally really like the story of this film. There's just parts of it that definitely are weird. I can't really talk about them too much because then it'd probably spoil the movie. But there are some parts in this movie where you don't really know what's going on. And this is where I'm kind of gonna touch on like the cinematography, VFX, and all that stuff. This film is shot like it's a music video, and that's both a good and bad thing. It's good because I think it results in some really good visuals. Like, I like the colors in a lot of scenes, I like the imagery you see through a lot of the music video style, but it also makes the movie pretty confusing. Because throughout the film, you'll get to parts where you're like, you don't even know what's going on because there's so many cuts going on. There's so many different bright colors. Like, if you have epilepsy, do not watch this movie. They don't warn you about all the epileptic scenes in this film, but there are a lot of them, so maybe don't watch this if you have epilepsy. Also, there's just scenes that straight up don't make sense to me anyway in regards to how it's shot. Like, they just throw in some random stuff that I'm guessing is just to kind of make the audience a little at ease because they don't know what's going on, but to me, it just makes the film all the more confusing. And especially at the end, they throw in a lot more supernatural elements to the film that do kind of make sense with the way the story's being told, but they're not explained and are just kind of thrown in there at the end. Yes, not everything needs to be explained, but it's just a little weird. Now we're going to get into a segment that I've made solely for horror films. And this segment is going to be called Blood Money. In this segment, I'm going to be talking about my favorite kill of the film and just in general what I think of the kills in the movie. So I guess we'll just talk about the overall kills in the film first. There aren't many in this film, which there shouldn't be with the way the story's being told. But what kills are in here are both really good and really, we'll just say, interesting. I do love that they use a lot of practical gore for these kills. If you ask any horror fan, they'll always say practical over digital, and they are absolutely right. Again, I'm not going to touch on the kills too much because, again, it'll spoil the movie. But I will say my favorite kill of the film is probably the second to last kill of the film. I'll just say that the practical effects on that kill were, I think, the best of the movie, and that's all I can really say about it, unfortunately, because don't want to spoil it for you. One last thing I want to touch on is, yes, I know in every horror movie they have to dumb down the characters so that the plot can keep going, or else we wouldn't have a movie. But Cameron Cade does some stupid stuff in this movie. At least I think is stupid. For the most part, I'd say he does do what I think any normal person would do in this scenario. But there are some times where I'm like, dude, you really don't see the red flags here? Or sometimes he just won't really react how I would think anyone else would really react to something. And yes, I know you're already stuck in shit, so you can't really get out of it, so you might as well play along, but I don't know. I just feel like the way he went about it could have been better and maybe a little less dumb. But I'm also dumb, so I probably would have done the same things he did. Now, earlier when I said I wouldn't blame you for thinking Jordan Peele was in the director's chair the whole time, what I mean by that is if you've seen any Jordan Peele films previously, like I have, Jordan Peele has a weird style of making horror films where every horror film has like a main subject that's embedded in reality of some kind, and then he throws in a weird supernatural element to make it a little bit interesting. And I'd say that trend has continued with this one. Yes, I know he didn't direct it, but it feels like he did. Because this film talks about a very real topic, but is very supernatural in nature, which can be said about just about any other Jordan Peele film that's been released, at least his horror movies. Because if you've seen his movies like Get Out, Nope, Us, and maybe even his produced ones, I don't remember, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying his films are necessarily bad, because I did enjoy Nope when I watched it. I still haven't seen Get Out, but I have heard it's really good. But it just feels like he was in the director's chair the whole time, which I guess kudos to the director for copying Jordan Peele's style so well, I guess. And hey, it ultimately came out a pretty good movie from my standards. Also, that song that Daniel Curry made for this song is fire. Overall, guys, I think this is a really solid movie. It's not anything crazy necessarily. It's a pretty short movie, which I think ultimately makes for an easy watch and easy rewatch. And I would say if you're a horror fan or even just a fan of football, then I would say this film's at least worth the ticket. And that's my review of him 2025. Now for my next review, I'm going to let you guys decide. Your first option, I review one battle after another next week, or next week, I review some other 2025 release that has come out. This could be The Long Walk, this could be Superman, this could be another weird horror movie like Death of a Unicorn, could honestly be anything. Let me know if you guys think I missed anything with this review. I feel like I touched on all I wanted to touch on, but if there's anything you would have wanted me to talk about this movie, let me know in the comments, and I will take that into account for my future reviews. And as a YouTuber, I have to recommend that you, of course, subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. And if you have seen him, give me your 2 cents on him in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed my review, and tune in next week for the next time I give you my 2 cents. See ya.